So my name is William Gaunitz. I am the founder of Evolution Hair Loss Institute and Advanced Trichology Products. I'm an advisor to the WTS. I've been in practice for 14 years, and mainly I specialize in androgenetic alopecia. It is my experience, ultimately though, that there are numerous things that go into each hair loss case. Every symptom typically has an underlying cause, and more so than just standard dihydrotestosterone. I find that a lot of these elements that I see in the average case typically can be linked to nutritional deficiency, toxic load factors, dietary and lifestyle issues, and in some cases, improper hair loss treatment. The scenarios that I just mentioned can make any situation worse, and in many cases, those items would not have influenced the hair at all, or the hair wouldn't have fallen out without those items being present for many years. So ultimately, I find that you have to treat the whole body. And my approach is a 5-step approach that I've been using now for 14 years. That approach really has these 5 elements that are here, which is detox, hair care products, scalp serums, usually with Minoxidil, nutritional supplementation, and low-level laser therapy. Today, I'm going to focus on low-level laser therapy and go into a little more detail than you've probably heard before. I have a tremendous experience with low-level lasers because since 2002, that's what my entire clinic has been based on. So 95% of my clientele over those years have done some type of low-level laser therapy. I've seen clear limitations with laser. I've also learned how to use it effectively. I've seen some clients grow 20 years worth of lost hair back, and others lose hair because of overstimulation. It is this variation that causes problems because everyone's an individual, and you can't just use a blanket laser protocol and expect the same result every single time. Laser has to be done right. Today I'm going to share some of my secrets to success, along with some history of laser in the US, why some of these devices are still present, and hopefully this will allow you to provide better treatment to your clients. Really, there are only 2 types of laser therapy. You've got clinical and you've got at home. Clinical laser typically is made up of devices that are going to be 60 to 120 diodes. They're normally used twice weekly for 30 minutes. The average treatment time is spaced out, usually like a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday, Saturday type of schedule. The average wavelength is 635 nanometers to 670 nanometers, which is in the red spectrum. Only a handful of clinical devices make up what's used in the US market, and there are 3 core devices that I'll talk about today. I want you to pay attention to the number of diodes in each one of these devices so that you can better understand now when I talk about overstimulation and how much laser is necessary, what core clinical devices normally use. So the first device is the Ravage 670. This device has been around in numerous forms since the late 90s, 1999, 2000. And this device has 60 diodes. They are focused beams, they penetrate a little bit deeper. They are embedded in a rotating hood, and they're using a 670 nanometer wavelength. The original device was brought to the US by a Swedish company called Laser Hair Care, and then was rebranded as Harmonix, which you guys might remember, as a 30 diode device up until about 2007. The results were good to fair. It was actually the first device that I ever used when I was trying to get my hair back. The next device is the Sonetics clinical unit. So around 2004, Sonetics came out with a device. It was 107 unfocused diodes, 650 nanometers. It now has an FDA clearance, but did not at the time. And it became the standard in doctors' offices from 2006 to 2007. That device was more power is better at the time. And it had a very unusual protocol. The protocol was actually front-end loaded, which means they were doing a tremendous amount of laser at the beginning and trickling off at the end. The benefit to that was nearly an immediate result. So within the first 6 weeks, they were doing 3 30-minute laser treatments per week. The following 6 weeks thereafter, it was twice a week for 30 minutes. Then for a period of 6 months, it was only once weekly for 30 minutes. And the last 90 days was only 30-minute treatment once every 2 weeks. When that occurred, the client actually got a lot of stimulus at the beginning, got a good result, was happy, but then at that point, as the treatment went on, it continued to digress. So really, although it was a quick result, the results diminished after 3 months. The third device is the MEP90. This was actually the first device to get any clinical recommendation by the FDA. They got a 510K around 2010 with their own research. It's an 80 diode device with unfocused beams, and it's 650 nanometer wavelength. This, again, with an unusual protocol, it did get its FDA clearance with this exact protocol. It's once weekly for 20 minutes for a period of 52 weeks. And it is FDA cleared for a female with androgenetic alopecia. The device is extremely expensive, so thus the consumer is typically paying more for that treatment. And normally it's going to pay about $100 a session. It's simply not worth it. The next phase of devices out of the core are simply salon clinical devices. Obviously, laser was catching on. Some of these companies decided to capitalize on it, so they were just putting lasers inside a hood. None of these devices have a 510K FDA clearance, and they're ranging somewhere between 60 and 110 diodes, and they're using 650 nanometer 655s, varying manufacturers. Results are fair at best. Problems with clinical laser alone. Ultimately, the effects of laser are not long-lasting. Once you have a treatment, you're going to metabolize the energy quickly, and without blocking the underlying reason for the loss, ultimately, there's not a whole lot that's going to be lingering as far as a positive impact. Additionally, laser doesn't impact DHT or any hormonal influence whatsoever. Also, nutritional toxic load factors are not influenced either. And laser does not regrow hair. It is cleared to improve the width and diameter of the existing hair. So for the consumer, if you're coming into a clinic, it is potentially long-term an expensive proposition. And ultimately, if people are trying to come to see you in your clinic, you're going to be limited by the amount of time that it takes for that individual to come into your clinic on a regular basis. The alternate to that is an at-home device. At-home devices range in 12 to 272 diodes. That is a very, very large range. Helmets are now mainstream normal, and nearly all devices are using either 650s or 675s. Mainstream devices that are out there, most of which have a 510K market clearance at this point. And if they don't have a FDA-approved market clearance, you should probably not purchase it. Brief history about lasers. In 2001, HairMax had a 1-diode laser that was first brought to the US and was Time Magazine's Invention of the Year. In 2006, Cydetics came out with a 9 and 12 diode handheld design. And in 2007, HairMax really developed the first device that got a FDA clearance. And again, this is a clearance for the promotion of hair growth. It is not an approval. So when that 2007 HairMax clearance hit, the earth shattered, and all of a sudden laser was on the map as an actual device that did something. So thereafter, you had multiple competitors that came after. So the Lavage company came out with the iGrow laser in 2010. Laser Cap came out with a 224 diode device also in 2010. The Capillus came out with a 272 diode device, constantly just one-upping each other for marketing. And additionally, in 2013, the Theradome came to market with an 80 diode device. And in really the time frame between 2013 and 2015, you had FDA clearances across the board. If you look at this, the disparity between the protocols, in 2015, HairMax came out with an 80 diode hairband, and that device is only used for 90 seconds twice a week. devices claim to work. Yet one of them has 12 diodes and the other one has 272 diodes. They all have FDA clearances. And one of these, which is the AirMax handheld device, is 22 times less powerful than the 272 diode pillars. So again, if they all do the same thing, why is one 22 times more powerful than the other? Ultimately, again, different protocols. One's 90 seconds twice a week. The other is 30 minutes 3 times weekly. So how are you supposed to tell your client what to do to get results? So the trick is determining what device is suitable based upon the strength for that individual. So ultimately, Dr. Michael Hamlin ended up putting out some research. He's also on the board of LaserCap that explained the arc of effectiveness. You have an amount of energy that when you're using this curve, basically the arc of effectiveness of biostimulation says that too little energy is not going to produce a result, but too much energy is going to cross a line. And when that line is crossed, you actually begin to decrease results, or in some cases, induce shedding, which I call overstimulation. So what do? I have established some protocols over the last 14 years that work for me. And it is a dark and light hair protocol. The dark hair protocol is for individuals who have dark, thick, coarse hair and darker skin. And the reason that that matters is the darkness or the melanin in the skin is going to attract the light. Additionally, there are other factors. Somebody with less than 5 years worth of hair loss is going to do better with the dark hair protocol, and with at least 50% active hair follicles. And ultimately, the diode usage should probably not exceed 30 diodes, meaning in our clinic, in somebody who comes in this scenario, they will be using between 15 and 30 diode devices only for their entire treatment protocol for upwards of a year. So they're going to use this twice weekly for 30 minutes, alternating between 15 and 30 diodes and increasing over time, but not to exceed 30 diodes. So if you look at all those at-home devices, there's only a handful that are actually under 60 diodes. So these twice weekly treatments, again, are going to increase strength over the time, because like anything, your body is going to build a tolerance to something. A light hair protocol is quite the opposite. The light hair protocol is for somebody with light fine hair. It could be with somebody with light skin who has even dark hair strands, but very, very fine strands. So someone perhaps of Asian descent with, again, very small, fine individual units, because there isn't that melanin at the base of the hair follicle to attract a tremendous amount of light, because that hair shaft is smaller. Also, individuals with dormancy over 50%. So if you've been losing hair for a long period of time, over 5 years, you may have more than 50% dormancy in an area. If that's the case, you probably need more energy. Over time, you lose subcutaneous fat in the scalp. That seems to have a direct result with how much energy you need. So in a case like this, you could, depending upon the needs of the individual, start with anywhere from 30 to 60 diodes and going up to, in some cases, 120 diodes, 2 to 3 times weekly for 30 minutes. So again, you have to assess the client, see where they're at, see where they fit in this, and ultimately start out slow. Always start out at 30 minutes with 30 diodes for a light hair protocol and work your way up. You can always increase strength over time. This is a little chart that I put together for people who want to purchase a 224 diode at-home device. So you'll be able to see these are clients of ours, and this is how we treated them. So we have very light hair on the left. He required a tremendous amount of energy to get a result. There's very thin hair, because there was quite a bit of dormancy in that case. And very fine hair, mainly due to the length of time that the hair had been gone, but ultimately that's what his hair was at the time. Then you have somebody who should not use that amount of energy at all, because they have dark, coarse hair, and they have more olive skin, so they have a lot of melanin, and ultimately too much energy is going to overstimulate the individual. So, who's not a candidate for laser? So if you're applying the right energy to the right scenario, who should not use laser at all? Well, there are some people who simply will not get a result. So people with no miniaturized pigmented hair in an area are not going to get a result. If there's no pigment at all in that hair, it is a true vellus hair, it will not respond to laser. It is what it is. Someone with extreme untreated Demodex or fungal overgrowth, which is that picture there, the same thing that stimulates our cells, which is the low-level laser energy in the red light spectrum, will stimulate the cell of either the fungus or the Demodex, and it will create a flare-up. We do not want to aggravate the scenario by creating a flare-up and adding energy to that scenario. So they should not use laser until their scalp is clear, or at least until they are undergoing treatment for the fungal or Demodex overgrowth. Also, someone with psoriasis. Psoriasis is an autoimmune condition that can flare up. If you add energy that is going to stimulate your immune system to an area that already has an exposed psoriatic patch, you are going to flare up that psoriasis. Early on in 2003, when I first got started, I was told that laser energy would actually stop psoriasis. So I had a client that I used a normal protocol on, and it flared up. The worst weeping psoriasis I've ever seen. It was bad. So don't do that. Someone with an extreme untreated iron deficiency or a vitamin D deficiency. Those minerals and vitamins are extremely important to the hair. If you add a bunch of energy and you're trying to stimulate the production of new cells and you don't have enough vitamins to keep up with that, you are going to cause shedding, extreme shedding. And additionally, the extreme alopecia areata, totalis, cicatricial alopecia, again, these are overactive immune responses. If you stimulate the immune system, you plausibly run the risk of it going the other direction and things getting worse. So typically, if you're going to do that, use a steroid topically like clonidazole that will hopefully keep things at bay. So, as I've already touched on, unusual laser phenomenon that's not usually spoken of. Overstimulation. Yeah, I've written about it. If you Google it, it's mostly my literature that comes up. Overstimulation is real. I get calls literally all over the world after people have gone through laser and they've lost tons of hair. In some cases, their hair has gone white. And there has just been an abundance of energy that has gone, again, the opposite direction. It creates microbial flare-up, which we can see directly underneath that. This is a true overstimulation case in this microbial flare-up slide. This is somebody who's going through our program for a long period of time. They ended up using more energy at the end of their program, and something just snapped. It was too much energy at that point, and they ended up having this massive amount of bacterial rings and oozing hair follicles because of the immune activity trying to push out this bacteria. And again, at the bottom is psoriatic flare-up, which was post-laser treatment. General rules when using laser. Always start with lower intensity. You could always go up, but if you're trying to recover somebody from an overstimulation scenario, it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks. Your client's going to be upset because you've caused them hair loss, and you want them to obviously trust you and get the best results possible. So start slow and slowly increase over time. Also, alternate your treatment times. What this means is, in our clinic, we normally will alternate treatments between 15 and 30-minute treatments almost throughout the entire duration of their program. The principle of change, stimulating change. So you are going to provide constant stimulus. The body doesn't get used to it. And over time, you're going to get a better result. If shedding increases for more than 8 weeks, you've got a problem. A lot of people in the laser world will tell you, oh no, excessive shedding, that's normal. And meanwhile, they're substantially worse than when they started. That is simply not true. If you're doing everything right, shedding should be under control in 8 weeks. That's it. It doesn't go any later than that. It's 8 weeks. So reevaluate the laser program if that's the case. Use laser therapy in conjunction with products. Because laser has limitations, use it for what it's good for, which is stimulating the rehabilitation of the area. But again, it's not doing anything for DHT, it's not creating new capillaries. So, a couple case studies. This is an amazing case of just using laser and removing the reason for the loss. So this is a physician that came to us who had an allergic reaction that he didn't know he was having. We identified the stressor, we removed it, which was actually a nutritional supplement that he was on. And we used laser, and that was pretty much it for a period of 3 months. You can see the amount of growth that occurred, and it was all over his scalp, and that was just with laser alone. And it was a light hair protocol because of the excessive amount of loss that he had. You'll also notice that he still has a bald spot. That bald spot was because he didn't do anything about the DHT. So the DHT area that needed to be minimized that wasn't remained. So that's why treating the entire scenario, you would have had a better outcome if he used DHT blockers. He simply didn't want to. Another great case, this is an individual who, with male pattern loss, went through our clinic and had a normal dark-haired protocol to begin with. However, we do scalp checks every 90 days to make sure that the client is doing well, which means we look at their scalp under the microscope again and make sure everything is good. He was doing so well at 90 days that I said, do not increase this laser, because if you increase the laser, we may fall out of this really positive pattern that we have. So he went for an entire 9-month duration at 15 minutes on a 30 diode setting. And obviously we detoxed, we did topical applications and DHT blocker and all the vitamins and the shampoo. But that was his result. It was an amazing result, and obviously very pleased. He was also vitamin D deficient. Another case study, male pattern loss. This is a protocol that was also a dark hair protocol, different scenario. Used the full clinical program, but he went through his normal 30 minutes at 30 diodes over time and had an amazing result. And I go back to this multiple times because this result is nearly perfect. And it was because he used the right amount of energy, used the right products, and ultimately got a result that looks like a hair transplant in best case scenario. So how do you make laser most effective? Well, there's 3 things that I go back to every time I'm talking to a new client that you pretty much always have to overcome androgenetic alopecia. 1 is laser, applying the right amount of laser. 2 is using topical applications, usually containing Minoxidil. Obviously, I recommend our product because it not only has no propylene glycol, but it also has antimicrobials, which are going to prevent any type of fungus or other flare-ups that can happen from laser. And number 3, blocking the underlying cause. Now that can be multiple things, but usually it's genetics, and in some cases genetics with a nutritional deficiency. So for a man, use DHT blocker or finasteride. For a female, we use a natural hormone balancing cream with phytoestrogens, which actually does a far better job at blocking DHT for women over the age of 35. However, if there's a nutritional deficiency, fix it. Get blood tests, get vitamin D tested, get ferritin tested, find out their blood type, and make sure you're accurately giving them everything that is going to block the underlying cause. If you do all of that, I call that the trifecta of male and female pattern hair loss treatment, then they will have the best outcome possible. So why do they all work together? Well, laser stimulates cell reproduction. So that is a positive thing as long as everything is correct. So that obviously is going to improve the width and diameter of the hair shaft. That's what it's FDA cleared to do. as well as it reduces inflammation and obviously increases ATP. Second is the topical minoxidil formulas, which are clinically proven to regrow hair, but the quality of the hair is usually poor. So that's where the laser comes in and then stimulates the elongation of that new hair and develops pigmentation. And usually, the microcirculation from minoxidil is second to none. There's really nothing that works like minoxidil to improve results. Those two things in many cases are 80% of an outcome. Blocking the cause. If this cause remains and you're trying to stimulate results with minoxidil and laser, you're basically battling an arm wrestling match. If this cause exists, you're fighting this, and this opposing force is the cause. So if you prevent that cause from existing, then you win that arm wrestling match, and you're going to get the best result possible. So block the DHT, add iron, add vitamin D, add the B complex, add the essential fats, whatever you need to get the job done. This is ultimately, for a woman, a really good core critical treatment plan. So you've got laser, topical applications with minoxidil. For us, we use the hormone balancing cream with black cohosh, primrose oil with the phytoestrogens. And again, that's the core three. But the supportive nutritionals, vitamin D when needed, ferritin or iron when needed, follicle growth vitamin, which is our hair, skin, and nails. It's a B complex with a lot of other good things in it, but whatever you sufficiently are going to use to accomplish that goal. And eating right for the blood type. If you're not eating right for the blood type, you could be creating excessive inflammation, and obviously inflammation is going to lead to additional loss. In some cases, you've got irritable scalps, again, Demodex, fungal issues. These issues need to be tackled, and in this case, with a female, we would use shampoo, conditioner, DHT blocker. Our DHT blocker is unique because we have a natural antifungal in it, as well as probiotics and prebiotics to support the immune system. But EFA is going to also break down inflammation and detoxify. So we have a Detox, which is sort of an old Ayurvedic formula. It is a very aggressive liver and kidney detox. But when you get through it, it brings down inflammation to improve the results. Actually, every single one of those case studies that I showed you, they all detoxed beforehand. For men, similar core, laser, topical applications, DHT blocker, and or Propecia. If you're not familiar with how both of those work, DHT blocker, or the herbal formula that is typically saw palmetto, stingy nettle, pygeum, those herbal blends normally block the uptake of DHT into the follicle receptor. They do nothing systemically. Propecia is an enzyme inhibitor, so obviously you guys know it blocks 5-alpha reductase, and it's going to have a systemic impact. If you use those two together, you're going to get the best result for men. Ultimately, supportive nutritionals, as I've already mentioned, but ultimately you want to get the right things that may be influencing the individual negatively out of the way at the beginning. I go back to this again because I'm proud of this one. This was in 6 months with the dark hair protocol, and this is everything going right. Frontal hairline growing back with temporal points also growing back. It is a very challenging thing to do, and we were able to accomplish it with using laser correctly and all the right products. And this is a female, a light hair protocol. She's been losing hair for 20 years. This is a scenario you could dump as much energy into this woman's head as you wanted, and quite frankly, she would never really become overstimulated. She'd been losing hair for so long, and the hair was so fine, that really, again, we still have her on laser, and it's years later she's using the 224 diode device. But that device and using the appropriate energy gave her what was a very good result. She had frontal fibrosing and androgenetic. Ultimately, it was good, it wasn't perfect, but it was the best that could be done in that scenario. Again, another case, female, pattern loss, dark hair protocol. You can actually see those individual strands are relatively thick. And so in this case, she did not exceed 30 minutes on a 30 diode device. So at the end of the day, provide the best treatment for your client. Make sure you provide the right laser protocol. Always start out with less if need be. Use 5 steps of either our program or whatever program you want to use, but use something that is going to efficiently tackle all the components that need to be addressed at the beginning of the program, not as time goes on. And ultimately, get the blood test if need be, inquire about diet and blood type so you get the best results, and be effective so that you can get every client producing maximum results every time.